As tensions continue to rise, discussions surrounding potential political outcomes have begun to dominate both political circles and public conversation. Within the ANC, several names are being mentioned as possible interim or permanent successors should President Ramaphosa decide to comply with the court's directive. Among those discussed are Deputy President Paul Moshetel, who has maintained a notably quiet stance throughout the unfolding crisis, and former Health Minister Willie Miz, who despite his own share of controversies, continues to hold a loyal support base. Yet, neither appears to possess the unifying presence needed to bring together the ANC's increasingly fragmented membership or to restore public confidence. In the wake of the ruling, Ramaphosa's continued silence has only deepened national uncertainty. The presidency has yet to issue a formal response, though insiders report that Ramaphosa is weighing his legal options and consulting closely with senior advisors. According to confidential sources, the president is said to be deeply disheartened, convinced that the decision is politically motivated. He is reportedly considering filing an appeal while simultaneously rallying support from allies within the ANC's National Executive Committee, NEC. However, loyalty within the NEC has begun to waver, with many fearing the political consequences of being associated with Ramaphosa amid widespread public outrage. Watchdog organizations and civil society groups have reacted strongly to the ruling, demanding swift and decisive action. The Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution, CASC, Corruption Watch, and the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation issued a joint statement commending the judiciary's courage. They urged Parliament to fulfill its duty as the guardian of the people's will. In an uncommon show of solidarity, these organizations aligned themselves with opposition parties, calling for a parliamentary inquiry to determine whether Ramaphosa's conduct constitutes a violation of the Executive Members' Ethics Act, a step that could lead to impeachment proceedings. The verdict sent ripples of unease through the economic landscape. The Johannesburg Stock Exchange dipped slightly, and the rand weakened marginally against major currencies, reflecting investor apprehension over possible political instability. International observers, including key diplomatic allies such as the United States and the European Union, released cautious statements reaffirming their respect for South Africa's independent judiciary while urging all sides to seek a peaceful resolution. Rating agencies Fitch and Moody's identified growing political instability as a risk factor for potential downward revisions to the country's economic outlook. Protests both supporting and opposing the court's decision erupted across South Africa. In Soweto, hundreds gathered near the Hector Peterson Memorial, waving placards reading, "Ramaphosa must fall" and "Justice at last." Meanwhile, in Sandton, a smaller group expressed support for the president, accusing the judiciary of being weaponized for political ends. The South African Police Service increased patrols around key government buildings and media centers in anticipation of larger demonstrations. The crisis has placed Parliament in an increasingly difficult position. Should Ramaphosa refuse to step down, lawmakers could be compelled to invoke Section 89 of the Constitution, which outlines the procedure for removing a sitting president. This process requires a two-thirds majority vote in the National Assembly, an outcome possible only if enough ANC members break ranks and side with the opposition. Some ANC representatives from provinces such as Gauteng, Limpopo, and the Eastern Cape have already expressed concerns about the party's ability to weather the storm under Ramaphosa's leadership. Historically, the ANC has stood as a dominant force in South African politics, its unity rooted in the legacy of the liberation struggle and the moral authority of Nelson Mandela. However, years of corruption scandals, leadership infighting, and voter disillusionment have fractured that once solid foundation. Ramaphosa, once hailed as a moral reformer destined to restore integrity after the Zuma era, now faces accusations of breaking that very promise. His failure to act decisively against corruption and the shadow of the farm cash scandal, in which large sums of undeclared money were reportedly hidden at his private property, have gravely tarnished his image. Political analysts warn that this turmoil could mark the beginning of the ANC's decline. Professor Tiahomi, a political science lecturer at Wits University, observed that the party's internal cohesion appears to be deteriorating. He suggested that the crisis might trigger splinter movements or new coalitions from within the ANC itself. Many analysts now speculate that South Africa could be approaching an era of coalition governments, particularly if the ANC fails to secure a majority in the next national election. For a nation still grappling with extreme inequality, unemployment nearing 35%, and chronic failures in service delivery, this moment represents a crossroads, either the start of renewal or the deepening of disarray. Media coverage of the unfolding events has been relentless. Major outlets such as News 24, SABC, and ENCA have maintained continuous reporting with 24-hour updates, expert panels, and in-depth commentary. Radio talk shows have been inundated with callers expressing anger, concern, and cautious hope. Enough is enough, one caller declared on SAFM. We've tolerated broken promises and corruption for too long. If this is what it takes to get our country back on track, so be it. Amid the uproar, there are growing fears that political opportunism could thrive in the current vacuum. Extremist factions from both ends of the political spectrum are seizing the moment to intensify divisive rhetoric, exacerbating racial, class, and ideological tensions. The ANC Youth League condemned the court's decision as a betrayal of the revolutionary cause, while disillusioned Zuma loyalists celebrated it as poetic justice, claiming Ramaphosa had once undermined Zuma's presidency. Through it all, one voice remains conspicuously absent, that of Ramaphosa himself. His reluctance to address the nation has drawn widespread criticism, with commentators warning that silence at such a pivotal time only further erodes public trust. Veteran journalist Karima Brown cautioned, "This is not the time to retreat behind closed doors. This is the time for leadership. The stakes are too high." Whether Ramaphosa chooses to fight on or step aside will determine the future of both his presidency and the ANC itself. Should he persist, he risks dragging the party down with him. Yet, if he resigns, it could open the door to renewal, provided the ANC is willing to confront its systemic weaknesses and reconnect with the South African people. Either way, the nation stands on the brink of profound political transformation. In the coming days, South Africans will look to their democratic institutions, parliament, the judiciary, civil society, and the press, to uphold the rule of law and safeguard stability. The High Court's decision has offered a rare opportunity for accountability, but as Archbishop Thabo Makgoba declared during a prayer vigil in Cape Town following the ruling, this is merely the beginning of a long and difficult journey. This is not the end of South Africa's dream, he reminded the crowd. It is a test of our commitment to it. Let justice roll down like waters, and righteousness like a mighty stream.